The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was eating lunch at my desk. I remember that detail clearly because I had just opened a container of leftover pasta I'd made the Sunday before, and I was proud of myself for actually meal prepping for once. Small wins. I was 31 years old, working as a hospital billing coordinator in Phoenix, and small wins were what kept me going most days. My phone buzzed, my mom's name on the screen. I picked up smiling. I should not have picked up smiling. I should not have picked up smiling. "Honey," she said, and her voice had that particular warmth she used when she was about to ask me for something. I'd learned to recognize it years ago, but had never quite figured out how to brace myself against it. "Your brother and Lindsay have been planning the wedding details. We've been going over the guest list together, all of us, as a family." I put down my fork. "That sounds great," I said. "I've been waiting to hear about the date. I need to request time off work in advance if that's actually what I wanted to talk to you about." The pause that followed was 2 seconds long. I've replayed it 1,000 times since then. 2 seconds where I still believe my family was decent. Lindsay feels like the wedding should be, her words, an intimate celebration. Just close family and their closest friends. She's really particular about the energy in the room. I waited. "We think it's best if you're not on the guest list, sweetheart. You and Lindsay have never really clicked, and she doesn't want any tension on her big day." I sat there holding my phone, staring at my pasta going cold, and I didn't say a word for a long time. "Are you there?" "I'm here," I said. "Mom, I've been sending you and Dad $2,800 every single month for the past 3 years. I paid off your car. I'm currently paying the deposit on the venue." Another pause. Shorter this time. "Family helps family," she said quietly. "That's always been our rule." I hung up. Let me back up because none of this makes sense without the before. My brother. I'll call him my brother because that's all he's ever really been to me. A title without the substance is 4 years younger than me. Growing up, he was the one my parents worried about, hovered over, excused. Not in a cruel way. They weren't bad people, or at least I never thought they were. They just believed, somewhere deep down, that he needed more. More patience, more money, more chances, and I was the one who would be fine. I was always fine. I graduated college on a partial scholarship and 2 part-time jobs. I moved to Phoenix at 24 with $900 in savings and a used Honda that burned oil. I built something. Slowly, carefully, the way you do when there's no safety net. You test each branch before you put your weight on it. My parents hit a rough patch when I was 26. My dad's hours got cut, their mortgage adjusted, they called me, and I said yes because they were my parents and I had a little extra and I thought it would be temporary. It was not temporary. $200 became $500. $500 became $1,000. By the time I was 28, I had set up an automatic transfer of $2,800 a month into their joint account. I also covered my dad's truck payment when his transmission went. I paid for my mom's crown, not the dental insurance portion, the whole thing because her plan had a cap. I sent my brother $500 3 separate times when he was between jobs, which in his case meant he had quit something impulsively and hadn't started looking yet. When he met Lindsay, I thought maybe things would settle. She had a job, a real one, in HR at a mid-sized company downtown. I thought she might bring some stability. What she brought was opinions about who deserved to be in the room. They got engaged 14 months ago. I sent a card and a check for $300 because I was genuinely happy for him and I actually believed, that my family would choose to include me in something. 4 months ago, my mom called and said they'd found a venue, a vineyard event space about 40 minutes outside the city. "Beautiful," she said. "String lights and a stone patio and a view of the hills. The deposit was $6,400. Could I help?" I transferred $6,400 that same afternoon. After I hung up on her, I sat in the parking garage of my building for 45 minutes. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I thought I would cry. Instead, I just sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, engine off, watching a pigeon walk very seriously across the concrete 1 level below me, and I thought about all the math. $2,800 a month for 37 months. The truck payment. The dental work. The $500 sent to my brother 3 times. The $6,400 venue deposit. I got out my phone and added it up. The number was 114,114. Then I opened my banking app and I canceled the automatic transfer. One time, I didn't reschedule it, didn't set a new date, didn't leave a note in the memo line. I just turned it off. Then I called the Vineyard. The woman who answered was professional and kind, the way people in the event industry are trained to be. I explained that I was the card holder on the deposit for an event booked under my brother's name and I needed to cancel. She pulled up the reservation. "I do see that the deposit was placed on your card," she said. "Per our policy, cancellations made more than 6 months before the event date receive a full refund to the original payment method. The wedding was 9 months away." "Please process the cancellation," I said. "Of course. You'll see the $6,400 back within 5 to 7 business days." I thanked her and hung up. Then I drove home, changed into sweatpants, and ordered Thai food. I watched a documentary about deep-sea fish, creatures that generate their own light in absolute darkness, and I fell asleep on the couch around 9. I slept better than I had in months. The call started the next morning. My mom 7:42 a.m. I didn't answer. My dad 8:15 a.m. I didn't answer. My dad 8:15 a.m. I didn't answer. My mom again 8:51 a.m. Then 9,003 a.m. Then 9:30 a.m. My brother once at 10:17 a.m. That one I almost answered. Almost. By noon there were 14 missed calls. By the end of the day, 26. I didn't block anyone. I just didn't pick up. There's a difference. Blocking felt like a door slamming. Not answering felt like choosing, quietly, to step back from a window. The texts came too. My mom's were long paragraphs, the kind she types with one finger and no punctuation so they arrive as a single breathless wall of words. My brother's were short and angry. My dad sent 2, both of which said some variation of "this is not how we handle things as a family," which I found interesting given the circumstances. Lindsay texted me once. It was 3 sentences. "I don't know what you were expecting. This is our wedding and we get to decide who's there. You should be happy you got to be part of it financially." I read that text 3 times. Then I screenshot it and saved it to a folder I labeled, simply, documentation. On the 3rd day, my mom called my office. I work in a department of about 12 people. Our manager is a woman named... I'll call her my manager because she deserves more than a passing mention, and I want to protect her privacy, and she is one of the most measured, fair people I have ever worked for. She's been in healthcare administration for over 20 years. She does not rattle easily. My mom called the main line, got transferred, and asked to speak with whoever was in charge of my department. My manager came to my desk that afternoon with a calm face and closed the door of the small conference room behind us. "Your mother called," she said. She wasn't accusatory, she was simply informing me, the way you tell someone there was a weather alert. I closed my eyes for a moment. "I'm so sorry. She said you'd stolen money from your family and that you were having some kind of breakdown, and she was worried about your ability to perform your job responsibilities." The words landed like stones dropped from a height. "None of that is true," I said. And then, because my manager is the kind of person who deserves honesty, I told her everything. The transfers. The venue. The phone call. The cancellation. Lindsay's text. The missed calls. I pulled up my banking records on my phone and I showed her. 37 months of transfers. The venue charge. The refund, now processing. My manager looked at the screen for a long time. "This is your money," she said finally. "Yes." "And you stopped sending it?" "Yes." She nodded slowly. "I'm going to need you to send me a brief written summary of this situation, just for HR documentation purposes, in case there are further calls. Not because I doubt you, I don't, but because I want there to be a record that we handled this properly." I sent her that summary that evening attached to an email that took me 4 drafts to write. I kept it factual. Dates, amounts, a copy of the text from Lindsay. No emotion, just chronology. My manager replied with 2 sentences. "Thank you for this. I hope things settle down for you soon. I read that email at my kitchen table and I cried for the first time since any of this started. Not from sadness, from something harder to name. Relief, maybe, that someone who had no obligation to believe me simply did. The weekend after that, my parents drove to my apartment. I live on the third floor of a building that has a call box at the entrance. When it buzzed, I looked at the camera feed on my phone. My building has an app. And I saw my parents standing at the door. My mom had a casserole dish. My dad's hands were in his jacket pockets. I did not buzz them up. My mom pressed the call button again. Then again, I sat on my couch. My cat, a large, indifferent tabby I've had for 6 years, climbed into my lap and began cleaning his paw with great concentration, as if to say, this is manageable. Focus on what you can manage. Eventually, I heard my phone ring. My mom, calling my cell. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was 4 minutes long. I listened to it once the next morning with my coffee. She cried. She said she didn't understand why I was doing this to the family. She said my brother was devastated. She said Lindsay was a nervous wreck. She said that whatever I was upset about, we could work it out. But cutting everyone off wasn't the answer. And by the way, the automatic transfer hadn't come through, and were they supposed to expect it later in the month? Or, I stopped the voicemail there. The money. Even now, even in a 4-minute message meant to sound like grief, the money was in there. I deleted the voicemail. I made myself a second cup of coffee. I went for a walk around the park 2 blocks from my apartment. It was a cool morning, the kind that makes Phoenix feel briefly like somewhere else. The sky wide and pale pink above the rooftops. I passed a woman pushing a stroller and a man throwing a ball for a golden retriever who had absolutely no intention of giving it back. Ordinary life. Still here. About 2 weeks after the vineyard cancellation, my brother reached out by email. Not text. Email. Which told me someone had advised him to put it in writing. Probably Lindsay, who works in HR and understands documentation, which I suppose we now had in common. The email was long and mostly about how I had humiliated him, how I had sabotaged his wedding, how he had always known, somewhere, that I resented him, and this was just me finally showing my true colors. He listed things I had done over the years that had apparently bothered him. Times I hadn't come to family events, a birthday where I'd been late, a Thanksgiving 3 years ago where I'd seemed distracted. He didn't mention the $2,800 a month. He didn't mention the $2,800 a month. He didn't mention the truck, the dental bill, his own $500 3 times over. He mentioned the $6,400 deposit near the end, framed as theft. I composed my reply carefully. It was 63 words. I placed the $6,400 deposit on my card. I canceled the charge before any services were rendered. The refund went to my account. That is not theft. If you believe otherwise, you're welcome to speak with an attorney. I wish you and Lindsay well. I will not be responding to further emails on this topic. I reread it twice. Then I sent it. He didn't respond. My parents did, eventually, reach out again. Not by phone, not by showing up. My mom sent a card, an actual paper card, the kind with a flower on the front. Inside, in her careful handwriting, she'd written that she missed me, and that she knew things had gotten complicated, and that she hoped I would consider coming to the wedding. Not an apology, a hope. I held the card for a while, sitting at my kitchen table, turning it over in my hands. My cat jumped up and sniffed it with deep suspicion. I understood the impulse behind it. My mom is not a monster. My dad is not a monster. They are people who loved one child in a way that left very little room for the other, and who never quite noticed the weight that was shifting onto my shoulders, because I never made it visible. I kept sending the money. I kept answering the calls. I kept showing up or trying to, and they kept assuming I always would. That's not malice. It's something quieter and, in some ways, harder to reckon with. It's the slow accumulation of being taken for granted by people who genuinely don't realize they're doing it. I didn't go to the wedding. I found out later, through a cousin who texted me a photo without commentary, that it was held at a different venue, smaller. Indoors, fluorescent lighting. Not the vineyard with the string lights and the view of the hills. I looked at the photo for a moment. My brother in a gray suit, smiling widely. Lindsay in a dress with a long train. My parents on either side of them, dressed up and proud. I was not in the photo. I had paid for $114 worth of a family that took a photo without me. I closed the photo. I put my phone down. Here's what the months after that looked like. I stopped the automatic transfer and I did not restart it. I took that $2,800 a month and I opened a high-yield savings account and I put it there every month, automatically. The same discipline I had applied to sending it away now applied to keeping it. I made an appointment with a financial advisor, my first ever. I sat across from a man with a yellow legal pad and I told him what I had been spending. And he was quiet for a moment in a way that felt respectful rather than pitying. You've essentially been financing a household that isn't yours, he said. Yes. And now you're not. Correct. He helped me map out what the next 5 years could look like. We talked about what I actually wanted, not what I owed, not what I was responsible for, not what would keep the peace, but what I wanted. It was a stranger question than I expected. I had to think about it. A house. I wanted a house, not a large one, just mine, with a yard small enough that I could manage it myself and big enough for my cat to sit in the sun. He said that was achievable. He gave me a timeline. I drove home from that appointment through the flat, bright grid of Phoenix streets, and I felt something I want to be careful not to overstate. Not joy, exactly, but direction. The specific sensation of walking towards something instead of pouring yourself into a hole. My manager checked in with me a few weeks after the office incident. Not formally. She stopped by my desk at the end of a Thursday and said, "How are things going?" On the personal side. "Better," I said. And meant it. Good. She picked up the small succulent I keep near my monitor and examined it with mild curiosity. "You know, I've been in this guild a long time. I've seen a lot of people spend a lot of years trying to earn the love they already deserved." She set the succulent back down. "It never quite works." She walked back to her office. I watched her go. I thought about that sentence for the rest of the day. Trying to earn the love you already deserve. I had been doing that since I was 24 years old. Probably before. It's been almost 8 months now. My parents have called a handful of times, sparse and careful. Nothing like the barrage of that first week. I've answered a few. The conversations are short and orbit nothing in particular. The weather, my dad's knee, a neighbor's dog. The money doesn't come up. I don't know if they've figured out another way to manage or if my brother and Lindsay stepped in or if they took out a loan. I haven't asked. I don't say this coldly. I say it the way you learn to speak about something that once consumed you and now simply exists in the background, like a scar that's fully healed. You know it's there. You don't need to press on it to prove it. My brother and I have not spoken since the email. I think about what I would say if we did. I've rehearsed it the way you do at 2 a.m. when your brain decides that is the ideal time for imaginary confrontations. In my head, I'm always very calm. In my head, I say, "I don't hate you. I'm not even angry anymore. I just finally understood that I had been auditioning for a role in a family that had already cast someone else, and I stopped showing up to auditions." I don't know if I'll ever say that out loud. Maybe it doesn't need to be said. Last spring, I went to Seattle for the first time. I'd never been. I used the money I'd saved from 3 months of not sending the transfer, and I booked a flight and a small hotel, and I spent 5 days walking around a city that was green and gray and smelled like rain and coffee. I went to Pike Place Market and watched the fish guys throw salmon. I took a ferry to Bainbridge Island and stood on the deck as the city grew smaller behind me, the water very dark and very cold, the skyline clean against the clouds. I stood there for a long time, the wind off Puget Sound flat and sharp against my face, and I thought about nothing in particular, just the water, just the cold, just the fact that I was somewhere I had chosen to be, with money I had earned, on a trip no one had asked me to sacrifice. I took a photo of the skyline from the ferry deck. Just for me. No one in the frame. Just the city and the water and the light doing something complicated with the clouds. I still have it as my phone wallpaper. Some days when the phone rings and I look at the screen and feel that old flinch, that instinct that a call might mean something is being asked of me, I look at that photo first, the skyline, the water, the light. Then I decide whether to answer. There's something nobody tells you about being the reliable one in a family. You don't get chosen for that role. You just slowly become it through a series of small yeses that compound over years until saying no feels like a moral failing rather than a boundary. I was the one who would be fine. I was always fine, and because I was fine, no one thought to ask whether the weight I was carrying was actually mine to carry. I've thought a lot about how I got to $114,100. It didn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happened in 37 months of automatic transfers. It happened in a truck payment and a dental bill and 3 separate $500 deposits into my brother's account when he needed a bridge between his last impulsive quit and his next reluctant start. Each individual amount felt manageable. The accumulation was something else entirely. What I understand now is that generosity, when it goes unreciprocated long enough, stops functioning as a gift and starts functioning as an expectation. I didn't change as a person over those 3 years. What changed was the story my family told themselves about who I was. I became the one who covers things. Not a sister, not a daughter, a function. Lindsay's text is the thing I come back to most. You should be happy you got to be part of it financially. She wasn't being cruel for cruelty's sake. She was being honest. That was genuinely how they saw it. Participation through payment, inclusion through a wire transfer. The fact that I had never been asked whether that arrangement felt right, that I had never been given the chance to decline, that the question of what I wanted had simply never entered the room, none of that registered as a problem to her. That's not stupidity. It's what happens when people are never asked to reckon with the costs their comfort places on someone else. My brother grew up knowing I would be fine. My parents spent 3 years not questioning where the stability came from. Lindsay entered a family that had a system already in place and saw no reason to examine it. None of them were sitting in a room plotting against me. They were just living inside an arrangement they'd never had to justify. The hard thing, the thing that took me the longest to sit with, is that I built that arrangement too. I didn't speak up. I didn't set a number or a limit or a timeline. I told myself it was love and I was right. But love without honesty is just accommodation. And accommodation without limits eventually hollows you out. When I canceled the venue deposit, I didn't do it to hurt anyone. I did it because it was the first decision in years that was entirely mine. No one had asked me to transfer the money. I had done it voluntarily and I could voluntarily stop. That clarity, that the money was mine, that my choices were mine, that my presence at a wedding was not owed to anyone who had to be convinced to invite me. That was the thing that changed. My manager said I had been trying to earn love I already deserved. I've turned that sentence over in my hands many times since. The intelligence in it isn't just emotional, it's practical. You cannot spend your way into being valued by people who do not see your value. The transaction will never close. You will keep paying and the debt will keep growing because the debt was never really about money. What I have now is a savings account that grows every month, a financial plan with a timeline and a goal, a house, small mine, with enough yard for my cat to sit in the sun, a manager who believed me without hesitation, a photo of a skyline from a ferry deck in Seattle, taken with money I chose to keep. That's what integrity actually looks like, I think. Not the grand gesture, not the speech, just the slow, quiet work of choosing yourself, again and again, until it starts to feel less like defiance and more like home.